on Thursday in the partner hall at AWS reInvent, and I'm here with Jon Topper, founder and CEO of the Scale Factory, amongst many other accolades, right, Jon?
Yes, that's right. I also I co-host or co-organise the AWS User Group UK, which I think the Manchester folk call the London AWS User Group, because that's mostly where we are. I'm also an AWS Partner Ambassador for my contributions to the community, including that user group stuff as well.
Awesome. So, how many AWS reInvents is this for you?
I think this is my third. I was here in 2016 and then again in 2019, and of course,
weirdly not 2020, huh?
I was at reInvent 2020, and as far as any of us was, sort of hating the live experience and watching the stream that way.
I mean, I'm just questioning your dedication that you weren't here in person, really. And what keeps bringing you back?
Well, it's certainly not Vegas. Vegas is arguably the worst place in America. I like the vibe. I like the fact that it is a large conference that's very dedicated to the things that we do. I like the fact that it gives me opportunity to meet some of the people from the AWS teams that we deal with, kind of on Chime, unfortunately, and sort of see them face to face. So we work closely with the SaaS Factory team and the well-architected team. There are obviously account managers here that we know, so it's just good to sort of catch up in person. People that we could actually hang out with in London as well, but somehow we always end up meeting at in Vegas instead.
Almost like a dedicated time where everyone knows that this week is for networking and things like that. Sometimes hard to get hold of those people otherwise. When you kind of talk about like access to people, and that brings me on to another question. Like for you, what is this conference? Is it the sessions, the deep dives, the 400, 300 series expert level sessions, or is it like quote unquote LobbyCon and meeting and kind of just being around peers?
So for me, I learn generally quicker than most people teach on a stage, so actually I tend to prefer the hallway track and the kind of like see where serendipity takes you. I did book a handful of things. I got some allocated seating, but then they all sort of got bumped out by meetings that were set up with time constraints and so forth. So I've got a talk that I'm going to today from Colin McCarthy, who's a really interesting speaker on subject of security and the sort of Nitro infrastructure and that sort of stuff, which I was hoping to get to, and I'm going to be able to do that. It's a 400 level talk. Other than that, I'll be catching up on some of that in the YouTube videos after the fact with 2 times speed often, I guess.
1.5 speed for me is, the way to do it. I am going to try and get to that Nitro talk. We were actually talking about that yesterday and the implications for like Graviton 3's new speculative execution effectively, and whether it's Nitro that's going to protect that from the same things we saw in like the Intel world. And
interesting stuff. That the buried away in the press release about Graviton 3 is some talk about signing of addresses that go onto the stack, so that as they're popped, if they don't match a signature, then you just get an exception rather than it executing whatever random address has been put in there by your attacker. So a whole bunch of interesting security stuff in there that's sort of underplayed, I think, by the fact that the Graviton story is really about power efficiency and sort of bang for buck and cost efficiency. There's all this other great stuff in there as well that's going to be important.
They're taking the fact that they know they are running hundreds of people's workloads simultaneously quite seriously then with that architecture. Yeah. Awesome. 2 more questions for you, if that's okay. Awesome. First of all, what has excited you the most that you've seen here this week?
What's exciting me the most? I mean, Graviton 3 is pretty exciting as a thing. I grew up on Acorn hardware, so to see like the ARM chips that used to be in my computer at home make it now into very mainstream computing in the Apple devices, the new M1 MacBooks, and now into Graviton chips as well is pretty cool in general. Other than that, I just like the amount of stuff that you hear about at reInvent, where you maybe don't necessarily parse the implications of it all until you come back like next time. Things like serverless EMR and serverless Redshift, like that on the surface of it doesn't sound very interesting, but I think that's going to be pretty game changing for people who are today running those clusters in a server full kind of way. It's going to sort of save them a load of time. It's not exciting, it's just sort of takes away some of the janitorial stuff.
Reduces that overhead of bootstrapping a new project and getting all your ducks in a row, and that makes sense. Interesting. And then finally, obviously, Scale Factory, you're working with all kinds of customers, all kinds of businesses. What hasn't been solved? Do you see kind of common pain points in every customer that kind of are there as trends?
So we've focused over the last couple of years on SaaS businesses predominantly in various different sectors. So across the board, we've got ed tech and finance and pharma and that sort of thing. The one thing that I think is not very well solved in the AWS ecosystem for that demographic is the identity story for B2B SaaS workloads. Cognito is really lined up for B2C. It's got a load of operational deficiencies. Every year I tune into reInvent, I'm like, maybe this is the year we get a new Cognito. That hasn't happened this year either, which is quite disappointing. But I think that's not a solved problem. And I think part of the reason it's not a solved problem is that Cognito is about a tenth of the price of the commercial offerings that does the same thing, and so it's just about good enough. In fact, you can't back any of it up. No, let's just kind of ignore that a little bit. But it is a pretty difficult tool to use, and I'd like to see better investment in SaaS identity, I think, particularly for B2B clients in the next 12 months. Maybe this time next year we'll be celebrating a Cognito version 2 or a replacement product that does all those things instead.
That's really interesting, and I was laughing because as someone that's got a little side project built on serverless, and I'm actually using Cognito to try and do machine-to-machine auth, like even just building the CI/CD pipeline out to automatically like get tokens and do that and try testing it. Yeah, I feel that pain.
And the pain that the people suffer is that because you have to create a user pool per tenant, you have to automate this sort of standing up of loads and loads of bits of Cognito across your estate, and it's kind of fiddly. As I say, you can't back it up. If you lose your Cognito data and have to restore it, you don't get any of the passwords in there, so you have to force all your users through a reauth loop. It's just really unfriendly, and it is those pain points don't become apparent until you've used Cognito for a while. So as a sort of starting point, oh great, I've got auth. I haven't had to worry about writing my own OAuth 2 code and doing my own crypto. And then later on, you realise that it's missing probably about 40% of the things that you really want. And by that time, it's too late.
By that point, it's deep baked into your infrastructure. All your users are onboarded. You can't export them, like you say, without extra pain. Yeah. Next year, reInvent. Hopefully, wish list. Jon, thank you so much for spending time with us here today. Cheers.
Right, thanks very much.